However, although from our perspective, the universes were once created, they have indeed always existed because all time is simultaneous. Therefore, the question whether we will all become one with the creatrix in the future is true or not loses its meaning. As we can see, this has very little to do with ascending of the dimensions. Beings who are stuck in one or a few dimensions because they messed up or were locked into these dimensions by power-hungry entities can be inhibited to explore the other dimensions for a while, but essentially, star beings are capable of using the dimensions and densities as they please. Although some of them can be said to dwell in a certain dimension because they feel that's their home, normally dimensions and densities are used as playgrounds for spirits and souls, but also they are used as accessories in order for beings to check for probabilities that have to do with their own decisions. Let's say that a being wants to create a certain type of planet and a certain type of life form on it. This being can then, by thought processes alone, scan the dimensions to look for probable outcomes for such a creation. Then, the being can choose a probable outcome that comes closest to the being's original intent. Where in all this does ascension come into the picture? It doesn't seem to do so, does it? It sure looks as if ascension is basically a concept created by the AIF to keep soul fragments here on Earth busy with something irrelevant instead of really breaking free from the prison. A prisoner here on Earth who has been in jail for let's say 35 years of his life, how does he feel when he finally is free to leave the prison? Well, for some, freedom will be too overwhelming and they can't handle it. Hence, he quickly commits a new crime for one purpose only: to get caught and be put back in prison where he feels much safer because that's the reality he's been accustomed to. If another option were available to him, let's say to gradually getting used to the freedom outside the prison walls, he would have a greater chance to succeed. If so, freedom would perhaps make him feel happy and relieved. However, would he have ascended to a higher dimension? Well, it depends on how we look at it. For the newly released prisoner, it may feel that way, but outside the prison walls, there are many, many people who have always been able to live there and been free to visit the prison or other countries and places that have been inaccessible for the long-term prisoner. The reader can now expand on this allegory in all directions and get a broader idea of what I mean with all this. Thereby, we are not ascending per se, we will ascend once we've let ourselves out of the Earth prison, merely be using the dimensions that are always available to us. There are closed dimensions as well, however, many call them dimensions 912, see level 3 and the Abraxas papers for an example. They are the upper dimensions, where you need to prove yourself in order to gain access. The Orion Empire exists in these dimensions, and these dimensions are heavily guarded by MIKH guards who make sure that no one with ill intents enters these realms. Dimensions 912 are the inner sanctuary of the KHAA. Here is where you can learn in depth about things that interest you, and once a star race, star beings, planetary soul groups, or single spirits and souls are ready and willing to join the Empire and or get access to these dimensions, they go through the tests, and if they pass, they are allowed entry. This is where trust is very important. Those who dwell in this inner sanctuary must know, as far as it's possible, that those who live amongst them can be trusted. No wars and conflicts are supposed to be part of these dimensions. Although wars and conflicts obviously have happened anyway, such as Lucifer's rebellion, it is not common. However, we can see why the inner KHAA is so heavily guarded. The military is only used to defend this sanctuary, not to instigate battles, wars, or conquests. Here is, of course, where Queen In, Com-En.Lil, and Prince Minerda, Prince En.Lil live. I don't like calling dimensions by numbers, and as I've mentioned before, it's only for convenience. There are certainly more than 12 dimensions. I would say there are millions upon millions of them. It all depends on how many we create. Some may ask, do these three ultimate overseers of the KHAA have egos? The way I see it, I would say yes with a slight hesitation. I don't even know if it would be right to call it ego, but according to my research, it seems as if they have what could be called intuitive ego or heart-bound ego. With that, I don't mean that they are all about love and light. I have a feeling that they dislike that term. Instead, I am referring to the heart as a universal heart, which has to do with justice, equality for all, love for all beings whose intentions are to create a better universe for everybody to live in, and so on. I would say that justice is one of the most important parts of their egos. Again, I don't mean justice the way we are using the term here on Earth, which has nothing to do with justice at all. Jus bullet Tyson. 1. The quality of being just, fairness. 2. A. The principle of moral rightness, equity. B. Conformity to moral rightness in action or attitude, righteousness. 3. A. The upholding of what is just, especially fair treatment and due reward in accordance with honor, standards, or law. B. Law, the administration and procedure of law. 4. Conformity to truth, fact, or sound reason. The overcharged customer was angry, and with justice. 5. Aber. J. Law. A. A judge. B. A justice of the peace. Idiom. Do justice to. To treat adequately, fairly, or with full appreciation. The subject is so complex that I cannot do justice to it in a brief survey. 16. The above definitions are taken from The Free Dictionary by Farlex, http://www.thefreedictionary.com/ and as we can see, interestingly enough, none of the definition applies to the justice systems we follow here on Earth. I would say that with these definitions fully applied, it would be how the Orions interpret justice. It is very plausible that the word and the definitions originally came to Earth from Orion. I know there are courts in Orion, but the trials are usually very mundane if we compare them to the murder, rape, and incest trials we have here on Earth. In Orion, they don't have anything coming close to that, unless the trial has to do with some being or beings who live outside of Orion and perhaps cause harm to someone of the Orion Empire. The Orion Court acknowledges free will, but also emphasizes, do no harm to others. They let star races outside of Orion mind their own business as long as it does not affect Orion negatively, and free will amongst other star races is otherwise highly respected. I hope some people who have had a false idea of what ego is feel somewhat relieved from having read this section. The road to freedom is heavily booby-trapped, and the seeker of truth has to jump left and right not to step into the traps, figuratively speaking. It is tedious work,